Hello students, welcome back to the class. I am Rakesh from Prabhati Hildu Academy. Today we are understanding about constitutional design with the reference of two countries, which means South Africa and our own country, India. Let's start with the South African example. A person called Nelson Mandela, he started a movement against the South African government due to the apartheid system because he tried for treason, which means he not followed the rules by the white South African government. He and his seven other leaders were sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964 for daring to oppose the apartheid regime in his country. He spent the next 28 years in South Africa's most deadliest prison called Robben Island. How South Africa managed to fight against the apartheid. Apartheid was the name of a system of racial discrimination which was in South Africa. The white Europeans imposed this system on South Africa during the 17th and 18th centuries. The trading companies from Europe occupied with arms and force in the way they occupied India. The system of apartheid divided the people and labeled them on the basis of their skin color. The native people of South Africa are black in color. They made about 3/4 of the population and were called blacks. Besides these two groups, there were people mixed races who were called colored and people who migrated from India. They were forbidden from living in white areas. They could work in white areas only if they had a permit. Believe it or not, students, trains, buses, taxis, hotels, hospitals, school, colleges, libraries, cinema halls, theaters, beaches, swimming pool were completely different for both Europeans and non-Europeans people. You can see this picture how the staircase was different for both Europeans and non-Europeans only. The non-Europeans used to enter from the left side, Europeans has to enter from the right side. The role of African National Congress. Since 1950, the blacks, colored, and the Indians fought against the apartheid system. They launched several protests, marches, and strike against the non-white South African government. The African National Congress was the main source of the black people and led to the struggle against the policies of segregation. So this was the party symbol of ANC along with the leader Nelson Mandela. But the white government arrested Nelson Mandela and sent him to jail for more than 28 years. With a lot of pressure against the apartheid system, finally Nelson Mandela has been released from jail in the year of 1988. Took a shape of the framing of new constitution to the South Africa. As protests and struggles against apartheid had increased, the government realized that they could no longer keep the blacks under their rule through repression. The white regime changed its policies. Discriminatory laws were repealed, ban on political parties, and restrictions on the media were lifted. After 28 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela walked out of the jail as a free man. Finally, at the midnight of 26th April 1994, the new national flag of Republican South Africa has been hoisted, and thus South Africa became democratic nation in the world. From the story of South Africa, we arrive a question, which means why do we need a constitution? Let's understand with the meaning. The constitution of a country is a set of written rules that were accepted by all people living together in a country. Constitution is the supreme law that determines the relation between people living in a territory called as citizens. Also, the relationship between the people and the government. It generates a degree of trust and coordination that is necessary for different kind of people to live together. It specifies how the government will be constituted, who will have the power to take which kind of decisions, lays down limits on the powers of government and tells us what the rights of the citizens are, express the aspirations of the people about creating a good society. Now let's understand how the Indian constitution has been framed. Like South Africa, India's constitution was also drawn up under very difficult circumstances. The making of the constitution for a huge and diverse country like India was not an easy task. At that time, people of India were emerging from the status of subjects to that of citizens. The country was born through a partition on the basis of religious differences. The path to the Constitution. In 1928, Motilal Nehru and 8 other Congress leaders drafted a constitution for India which was called as the Nehru's Report. In 1931, the resolution at the Karachi session of the Indian National Congress discussed on how independent India's constitution should look like. Both these documents were committed to the inclusion of universal adult franchise, right to freedom of equality, and to protecting the rights of minorities in the Constitution of Independent India. Thus, some basic values were accepted by all the leaders who, much before the Constituent Assembly met to deliberate on the Constitution. Indian Constitution adopted many institutional details and procedures from colonial laws like the Government of India Act 1935. Elections were held in 1937 to provincial legislatures and ministers all over British India. The Constituent Assembly. Drafting of the document called the Constitution was done by an assembly of elected representatives called the Constituent Assembly. Elections to the Constituent Assembly were held in July 1946. The Constituent Assembly that wrote the Indian Constitution had 299 members. The first meeting of the new Constituent Assembly was held on 9th December 1946. The next meeting on 11 December 1946 under the chairmanship of Dr. Rajendra Prasad. The members of the Constituent Assembly were Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, C. Rajgopalachari, K.M. Munshi, T.T. Krishnamachari, Srimati Sarojini Naidu, Srimati Sucheta Krupalini. Leaders like S. Nijalingappa, K.C. Reddy, Kengal Hanumanthaya, Thakur Subramaniam represented Mysuru province in framing of the Constitution for India. Drafting Committee. The Constituent Assembly formed 22 committees and 5 subcommittees to examine in detail all the issues related to the country. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman of one of the most important committees, which means the Drafting Committee. Based on his contribution to the framing of the Constitution, he is called as the Chief Architect of Indian Constitution. The other members of this committee were N. Gopalswamy Iyengar, Aladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, K.M. Munshi, T.T. Krishnamachari, and many other people. This drafting committee, by referring other countries' constitution, they discussed and finally they concluded the writing of the Indian Constitution on 26 November 1949, which means 2 years, 11 months, 18 days to complete the very big task for our Indian country. Preamble to the Constitution. The Indian Constitution has combined itself the best features of different constitutions of the world has its own preamble. The preamble contains the fundamental policies and ideals of the Constitution. It is the sum of the structure, values, principles and goals of the Constitution. It is based on the aspirations and ideals of the people of India, which means the preamble represents the whole and soul of the Indian people demands. The preamble is a part of objective resolution put forward by Jawaharlal Nehru on December 13, 1946 and approved by the Constituent Assembly on January 22, 1947. This resolution upholds the natures of India's sovereign democratic republic nature, social, economic and political justice for all people is upheld. Preamble to our Constitution is meaningful. It describes our political system and is a key to understand our Constitution. It has been described as the jewel of the Constitution. K.M. Munshi has referred it as a political horoscope, which means if we understand the preamble properly means we can understand the entire Constitution of our country. Let's recall what we have learned today. We have discussed about apartheid system in South Africa, how this affected the life of people in South Africa, how the people were denied from all the facilities of the society. Later, the role of Nelson Mandela in making South Africa as the democratic nation. Also, we have discussed our country's constitutional preparation with the various committees like Constituent Assembly and Drafting Committee. So see you soon and thank you.